Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Microsoft Data and AI South Florida User Group. My name is Adriano, your host, and I thank you for joining us here once again for another great presentation. So, before we get started, remember, like, subscribe, click the bell so you can join the group. And today we have copy data from SQL Server to Azure SQL DB with Azure Data Factory by Torsten Strauss. And before we get started, let's keep in mind a couple of things. First, if you have any questions, remember to so before we get started, if you have any questions during the presentation, all you have to do is use the live chat below. The live chat to enter your questions. After the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to use the comment section below. So remember, live chat while we're here live, comment section afterwards. So today, as I said, we have copy data from SQL Server to Azure SQL DB with Azure Data Factory. Now, let us know where are you located at, also by using the live chat. And here we have Alpa. Hello, Alpa, and welcome. Frick Frack, welcome, Frick Frack. Let us know too if can you all hear me well. Whether you all can hear me well. Just a second here. Let's just double check. Making sure that we are online and you can see and hear us over here. All right, so Frick Frack, can you hear us well? All right, we are all set, folks. It is working. So as I was saying, today we have copy data from SQL Server to Azure SQL DB with Azure SQL Data Factory by Torsten Strauss. Now, without further ado, let's get Torsten here.
Hey.
Hello, Torsten. Can you hear me?
Hey. Yeah, I can hear you, Adriano. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So, folks, let us know if you all can hear Torsten and myself, and also use the live chat to enter your location. Speaking about location, tell us, Torsten, where are you located at?
I'm located in Germany, close to Cologne, city called Bochum.
All right, so welcome to the South Florida User Group. And here is once again speaking to the world.
Thank you.
And thank you for making the time to be here with us, sharing the knowledge. You know, some very exciting topic today. So can you tell us a little bit about the presentation?
Sure, Adriano. So what I'm going to present is how to set up Azure Data Factory in the right way and to use it, I would say, in the right way. Also considering that you have different kind of, I would say, stages like development, tests, and production. So everything you will see is, I would say, called best practice. And this is really important to understand that for sure, you can start with Azure Data Factory from scratch and you can do a lot of things in your UI, but in the end, I think it is all about infrastructure as a code, YAML pipeline, and make your code reusable and also stable. That is what I'm going to present.
Outstanding. Very interesting. So let's not hold you back. The only thing I was going to remind people is to take a minute to like, subscribe, and click the bell for the video. Are you ready?
I'm ready, yes.
Torsten. All right,
I'm
so
ready.
folks, enjoy it. Here we have, and Torsten, you want to share your screen?
I'm sharing already, right? Or do I need to
can't
share
see
another
that
time?
right now.
You can. Okay, perfect. Okay, cool.
I cannot.
So you cannot. Okay,
I,
1 second.
yeah.
I will share another time. So for whatever reason, we have problems with screen sharing today. So let me give it another try. So can you see it now?
Yes. Yes, we
Okay,
are
cool.
all set, Torsten. It's all you, man.
Okay, cool. So then I will start. So again, my name is Torsten Strauss. I'm a consultant, trainer, and speaker. As already mentioned, living in a small city called Bochum, close to Cologne, in Germany. I'm an MVP, Microsoft certified trainer, and so forth. Not that very interesting because I guess it is all about knowledge sharing. So let me do the following. First of all, I will close this one because this has sometimes problems. So again, when you start your journey with Azure Data Factory, as mentioned already, you first of all you have to understand how to set up an Azure Data Factory pipeline, or first of all the overall environment. So what I'm going to do here is this is something which I created within the Azure in the Azure portal, I would say. So we have a few resources here, but honestly, this is something which you can do for the very first beginning. But again, when you really want to have, I would say, a proper YAML pipeline in place, and when you want to ensure that your overall environment, including all the resources which you created within your resource group, this is something you want to retain, and you also want to apply to another environment like test and production. So that is the reason why you always have to worry about how to create your resources. And honestly, using the Azure portal is a very handy way, but this is nothing which you can use in a real project, because otherwise all these kind of clicks you are doing, you have to repeat for every single environment. This is nothing you can do. So therefore, my recommendation is either use PowerShell. So I will give you an example. So I have a few files available here. So let me open the folder. So you can see it here. I prepared several, I would say, PowerShell scripts. And one example for creating an Azure storage account, for example, is using, well, in this case, I'm not going to create an, I would say, I'm just creating a resource group. You can see it here. So this is something you can do. You can always fire the same command over and over again. You can also use something which is AZ resource group deployment. So you can have an ARM template or biceps template available, which you can use in order to have something which is called infrastructure as a code, right? You can have several parameters which you can use or which you can apply to your parameter settings within your ARM or biceps template. So let me open one for you. Now, 1 second. I think I need to go to the right folder. For whatever reason, the files are not showing up. So let me do this. I can do it from here. So this is, for example, an ARM template. And you know, the recommendation from Microsoft is now using biceps in terms of ARM. But anyway, the syntax is different. I would say the idea is the same. So what you are going to do is you create all your resources in an ARM or biceps template. So when you have a parameter here, for example, right, and another one which you can use in order to parameterize your overall environment. Yeah. So taking into consideration that you have a development environment where you need different settings, right? And when you go to production, it is very likely that you need other settings. So that is definitely my recommendation, right? Spend time on your infrastructure as a code, because otherwise you you're going, or you have a lot of troubles when the more developers and the more complicated your overall environment will be. Yeah? So that is really my recommendation. First of all, create everything from scratch in a PowerShell ARM or biceps template. That's it. So in the end, for sure, you start within Azure Data Factory, and I have two. I'm using, in this presentation, I'm using one of the Azure Data Factory instances. In the other session, which I will have in a few weeks' time, I will also use the other one. But anyway, so you can always go to your Azure Data Factory portal. And for example, when you wonder, how can you get these kind of how can you access the Azure Data Factory the first time? You can open this from here, and it will automatically direct you through the Azure Data Factory portal. So, and if you have more than one instance available, so you can always switch between the Azure Data Factory the Azure Data Factory instances, right? So let me see whether this is the right one. Yes, this is the right one. So what I've done is, first of all, in order to secure your overall environment, it is, I would say, it is required to have something which is called Azure Key Vault. So an Azure Key Vault is something where you can save all your secrets and your keys, right? Your certificates, everything which have to keep secret. This is something you can do with the Azure with the Key Vault. Sorry. So let me go to the Key Vault. So here we can see a Key Vault, for example, and within the Key Vault, I have several secrets available. So we can see I have a secret which is called ADF demo SQL connection string, another one which is called ADF demo version 2 access key, and another one which I'm using to connect to my on-premise SQL server, because I also want to give you some idea about how can you access your on-premise data sources, because sometimes you still have on-premise data sources like an, I don't know, a file share or maybe a SQL server on a VM. And even if you have a VM in Azure, this is considered to be on-premise. So you have to think about a way to connect to your on-premise data sources until you migrated everything to PaaS offering, platform as a service. Because again, a VM is considered to be an infrastructure as a service, and you cannot connect to a VM without I would say including a so-called what is it? One second, I will show it to you because otherwise it is hard to follow. So we can see the integration runtime here, and we have something which is the on-premise integration runtime, right? So, and this is something which you can, what's called self-hosted integration runtime, but nevertheless, it will give you access to your on-premise data sources, which you have to install on maybe one of your VMs, or when you cannot access the VMs from the VM where you installed the self-hosted integration runtime, you have to install it on every single VM, right? That is one example, and I will introduce this later on how it works, of how you can access data from an on-premise data source. So self-hosted integration runtime. So anyway, so you can see it's pretty simple. We have only one SQL connection string. We have an access key to blob storage, right, or to a storage container to be precise, and we have a connection string to an on-premise data SQL server in this case. So that's all. Let me open this one. So you can see there is one current version and there are historical versions available. Anyway, this is the connection to my SQL database. So you can, let me copy this one and bring it to here. So you can see how it works. It's just nothing else than a connection string, which you can put into your Key Vault in order to secure these, I would say, secret values. Very easy, because you do not want to reveal the user and the password, very likely. I mean, there are different ways to achieve it. You don't even need to work with the SQL authentication. You can use your managed service identity, for example. But anyway, this is just an example. For your Key Vault, not for your Key Vault, for your storage account, you have another secret here. and this is important to understand. So this one, let me copy this and paste it here. Then your HTTP address to your account, your storage account, and your storage contains storage with containers. How can you access data in a storage? For example, I don't know, or stating, for example, I've set the files here. I want to get these files in my Azure Data Factory. So I want to, I don't know, copy the data. Maybe I want to transform the data. So how can I achieve this?
Torsten, can you hear me?
You have your block container and your storage account and your block available. So the thing that's good, go to
Torsten,
my storage account.
can you hear me?
That's my storage account. And here you have something which is called access key. Wait a moment. So, come on. Slow.
Oh. Hi, folks. We are having a small problem here. We will be right back with you. So give us just a quick moment and we'll be back here.
Which is called Azure Blob Storage. So configure this. You can, I will do it from scratch that you can become an idea. So let me create blob storage. Continue. Let's say the moment Azure storage is fine. So normally what you can do, you can either let's say create or paste your connection string, or you can use an Azure Key Vault integration. That is exactly what you have to do. Right. So either you create a Key Vault from connection Key Vault from, or you already
Hello, folks. Sorry about that. Give us a minute here. See if overcome this small technical difficulty here. Thank you. Just bear with us here. In the meantime, let us know, where are you connecting from? Let us know where you're connecting from, and do you have any questions so far? So in the meantime, here we're having Torsten. He's just fixing here. He'll be right back. Connecting with us here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's bad. We are losing. We lost 7 minutes already.
Yeah. Let me see the screens where you were at. I think you were showing the. You were showing the. What do you call that? You were showing Visual Studio. I know that you explained about. You talked about using the infrastructure as code.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so sorry for that, but I don't know why it's not working. I mean, you can see it here. So the
I can see your screen here.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
Where are you now? Can you go back up a bit?
Yeah, for sure. So then I will, okay, infrastructure as a code. Okay, let's start
Yeah.
from here another time. Yeah, so sorry about that.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Don't worry about the time. We can always edit here, but you
Okay.
know, all right. And I can hear you well now.
Okay, that's good. Maybe I hope it is not coming up another time, the problem here.
All right.
Okay. So should I continue now?
Yes, please. It's all you now.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, sorry for the interruption. For some reasons, I don't know, the audio and broadcasting didn't work. So again, so I was talking about infrastructure as code, and honestly, I do not know where it stopped. So let me summarize this another time. So my recommendation is whenever you work with Azure in common, so with Azure Data Factory here in this example, you should use infrastructure as a code in order to make all your resources, or the other way around, you can ensure that you can always recreate all your resources in a development, test, and production environment, right? Because normally you start with one environment, and then maybe later you decide that you want to have a test and a production environment, which is completely impossible because you cannot remember everything you did in the Azure portal to create all your resources, right? That's impossible. So do yourself a favor and start with infrastructure as a code, even it takes longer, right? So one example, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you hadn't a chance to see this example. Very easy. So you can always go back to your Azure portal and you can start your journey here. Let me go. Okay, now I need to open the portal another time. Hide. And let me go to the Azure portal. I just want to give you an example where you can get the ARM template. So in almost every single resource in the Azure portal, you can see something which is called a template, right? Export template. And from here you can start. So it will automatically generate a template for you, which is most of the time parameterized. You can see there's one parameter, at least for the name. Yeah. And this is something which you can use, which you can download in order to make sure that you can deploy the same resource over and over again, but maybe with another name, because you cannot create the same resource with the same name in the same resource group. That's impossible, right? And in order to do so, you can easily use a PowerShell script like this, yeah, new AZ resource group deployment. Then you can name your template file. So that is the JSON file, right? One example is here. It's just another example. It's just the JSON file. They're pretty easy. And I know biceps will be the replacement of ARM. Yeah. Anyway, I will start with ARM because it's very easy to I would say translate an ARM template to biceps template. They even, I would say, online translate available. It's the same idea. I do not want to talk about ARM biceps differences in detail here. I just want to make you aware that it's very easy to capture all your, I would say, clicks, yeah, all your manual stuff you did in the Azure portal. That is, I would say, recorded in an ARM template, and you can use this, right? Very easy. Yeah, you can use the PowerShell command let here, yeah, and give it the template file, yeah, pass the template file, and in this case, the parameter which is used is the storage prefix, right? And you can give it a meaningful, yeah, prefix name. And next time when you deploy to the test, when you deploy to production, maybe you will change the name, you will change the resource group at least. So that is the way you should work, right? And again, do yourself a favor, spend time on your infrastructure as a code, because otherwise I will guarantee that you are failing, right? You are failing, believe me. Okay, so that's about the infrastructure as a code. And let me go back now to the Azure Data Factory instance, which I already opened. So that is my current Azure Data Factory instance. I have more than that. You can always switch between your Azure Data Factory instances here, right? You can see I have a lot of them, not a lot, I have 4 of them. I will use another one. I have another presentation in 2 weeks or 3 weeks time. I didn't remember anymore, where I want to talk a little bit about how to migrate existing SSIS packages to Azure Data Factory. It's called Azure Data Factory Lift and Shift. Believe me, it's far away from lift and shift. Yeah? It sounds very, very simple, but it is very, very complicated when you do not know how it works, right? And that is always the key to be successful. So I'm using I would say an instance, which is called my central data factory. And normally you start your journey to be precise with the integration runtime. So what is an integration runtime? An integration runtime is something which gives you the possibility to, I would say, to connect to your different data sources. And this is nothing else than compute power, right? So we will see this later. So at the moment I have 2 of them, and there can be another one, which is the so-called SSIS, Azure Integration Runtime. Again, this is a topic for the next presentation. At the moment, I have 2. There's always one, which is the auto-resolved integration runtime. That is the one which is always there. And Azure tries to put your integration runtime as closest as possible to your data sources and data targets. So this is the reason why it is called auto-resolved, right? And then there's another one, which is called self-hosted integration runtime. And that is a way in order to get data from an on-premise VM, for example. In this example, it is a VM. You can also access an on-premise file share or whatever, or I don't know, maybe an SAP system which is still on-premise, or other on-premise resources. And you have to consider that even a VM, and that is my example which I want to show, a VM which already is hosted by Azure, so an Azure VM where you have a SQL Server on top of it, this is still considered to be an on-premise data source because it is a so-called infrastructure as a code. It is not PaaS, it is not platform as a service. Infrastructure, sorry, infrastructure as a service. It's a VM. Sorry, it's service, not code. And the other one is named platform as a service, right? And here you need to have the self-hosted integration runtime. Otherwise, you cannot connect. It's impossible. So that is something which I already created before the presentation because it takes some time. Very easy, to be honest. You can always go to new and select whatever you want to do. And you can create an Azure SSIS or self-hosted, right? And from here, I can show it at least self-hosted, so that you get an idea, right? Great. Now you can see that you have the key, which is the authentication key. And you can either have an express setup or a manual setup on your VM, on your on-premise VM. So that this integration runtime, which becomes part of your on-premise data source, is, I would say, connected and authenticated in your Azure Data Factory integration, Azure Data Factory instance, I would say. Very easy. You can scale up, you can scale down. There's a failover possibility, everything like this. This is something I want to cover in the next presentation, and for now I will drop this. But at least you have an idea, how the integration runtime, the self-hosted integration runtime was created, right? So that is the first thing. The next thing is you will start creating your link services, and the link service is nothing else than a connection to your data, to your data. Make it very easy. Here you have different types of connections. So you can see we have a lot, really a lot. And one example, for example, blob storage. Azure Blob Storage, which I'm using, and I want to tell you how I'm using it. Another resource is, it's a SQL database, for example, right? We can see SQL database, we have a managed instance. So there are a lot of connectors available, right? Again, this is just the connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This is not your data. This is just a connection to your data source. This So the data is defined in a so-called data set. So again, I want to talk about best practice. You can see that there is already one linked service called Azure Blob Storage. And you can see how it works. So when you start creating a linked service, you have to consider and you have to worry about security, right? In order to secure all your secrets, like a password, a username, certificate, or whatever, you can, and honestly, you should use your Azure Key Vault. So let me go to the Key Vault here. Let me go to the resource group. I should see in Azure Key Vault. Yeah. So there's a Key Vault which I named ADF My Key Vault. Maybe not very meaningful, but that's okay for now because you have to have a unique name here. And within the Key Vault, you can have secrets, you can have keys, certificates. So for Azure Data Factory, you will create secrets most of the times. And you can see how easy it is. We have, at the moment, I have 3 secrets. I have an ADF demo SQL connection string. So you can already guess what it is. This is nothing else than a connection string to an Azure SQL database. So how to create? Very easy. You can always create a new version, to overwrite your existing secret, or if the secret is still valid, you can get the secret from here, right? You can show secret, and I will give you one example so that you can see what is inside. Don't save. Let me go back here. I'm just using Notepad. So you can see that this is a connection string, and I want to make you aware about one, I would say, it is not very common. It took me a while in order to figure it out because I'm currently seeing it, and maybe it save you some time. So normally you will enter your SQL database, in this case with SQL authentication. I know it is not best practice. This is just a demonstration. I'm not talking about security here. For sure, it's much better to have a managed service identity in order to get access to a SQL Server. Anyway, this is a secret. I can use it, but you have to double the admin name with an @ sign in the middle. So it took some time in order to figure out why my connection wasn't working, and because I'm currently seeing it, I want to make you aware about it. Maybe again, it will save you some time. Then you can pass over your password. It's not very secured, but anyway, it's just a demonstration. It's called password. You can see I would never ever reveal these secrets within my Azure Data Factory, within my YAML pipeline. So I can use my secrets over and over in different resources. Your YAML pipeline, infrastructure as a code, Azure Data Factory, whatever. You have to define all your secrets in one place, and you have to maintain, and you can maintain all your secrets in one place, which is really handy. So again, this is also something you should consider as a best practice. All your secret information in a Key Vault. You can see I'm now want to access my Azure Blob Storage. So let me go back. So there is another there is a storage account, and I will open the Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. So you can see how it is created. We have the subscription, we have the storage account, and we have blob containers, right? And you can have a lot of blob containers in one storage account. For example, we are using in the Azure Data Factory, we are using the container staging, and here we have directories, and in the end we have files. Consider this as I know it's not true, but consider this to be a file share. So I'm pretty sure you get the idea. And again, I do not want to share these kind of secrets. So what I'm going to do first is, let me go back to my Key Vault. No, sorry, I was already on the right place. So here in the access keys, so you can see a connection string and a key. So you can get them from here. So that means once you create your storage account, you get a key on the connection string. And you can also ensure that in the, where is it? In the access control, that your role assignments, we should see, I'm wondering why maybe I'm in the wrong storage account. Normally I should see the managed service identity of the Azure Data Factory, but maybe I'm a little bit lost here. Anyway, so I don't know why it is not coming up. Maybe I'm a little bit confused, but anyway, so what you should do is when you have an Azure Data Factory instance, you get a so-called managed service identity, right? An identity for your application within Azure. This managed service identity you can use in order to grant this managed service identity to your Key Vault and to your storage account, for example, right? You can consider this as a user in your Azure Active Directory. So you can grant specific permission to the so-called MSI. So I need to double check. Maybe the storage account is not the right one. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is we have our blob storage here, and the authentication type is account key. And then I can either say connection string, and you can see this is something which I can hard code, which I do not like, because again, I have to enter the storage account key, the storage account name, and a lot of more information. I do not want to have this approach. I want to have, I want to use my secrets, which are secured by my Key Vault, right, already within my blob storage. So you can see I am in the Azure Key Vault here, and now I select my Key Vault, which is already defined, which is nothing else than, and I think this was my mistake. The MSE is granted on the Key Vault, not on the storage account. Yeah. So anyway, the Key Vault will give you access to all the secrets. Now I can use this Key Vault here in the blob storage. For whatever reason, it's not working anymore. It's great. I like this. What is wrong now? Sorry for this. So sometimes, okay, it's not working anymore. That's great. Let me refresh and hope it will go away. Something which I cannot foresee. Sorry for this, but yeah, I don't know. I hope the connection is not. Adriano, can you confirm that you still hear me? Okay, I guess so. Otherwise, what is wrong now? It's a little bit strange. Come on. That's okay. It's working. Cool. Anyway, let me go back. So again, here, this is my link to my Azure Key Vault, and within the Key Vault, I have all my secrets. I already presented this to you. So, and you can parameterize an Azure Blob Storage very easy. So what you can do is you can create, one second, let me go back to the, I will show you this. The file is already closed. So you can see the secret name here. So you can parameterize the Azure Blob Storage. So that means you are now able to connect to any blob storage by just changing the connection secret. So that means it will give you the full flexibility, because you can keep all your secrets within a Key Vault, and you can, I would say, save all your files in different blob containers, right? And here we can parameterize the Azure Blob Storage link server to a specific secret. And the secret will now direct you to the right blob storage in order to give you access to the, I don't know, underlying, in this case, text files, CSV files, I don't know, packet files. A lot of files are available. So that is very easy and a very handy approach, right? So this is something which you can do with a SQL database as well. So it's exactly the same approach. That means you have one SQL database connection, so link server, and the link server now can connect on the fly to I would say, to a specific SQL database. That is very handy, because otherwise you always have to create a new link server for every new SQL database, right, you want to access. That makes it a little bit more complicated because you can already imagine that the number of linked services will grow over time. So you have your integration runtime, you have your link service now, you have all your secrets in your Azure Data Factory, in your Key Vault available. That's perfect. The next thing you have to do is you can create so-called data sets. So, and the problem is, well, first of all, we will start with a good one. So let me go back to, or let me open this CSV Azure Blob Storage. And here you can see I'm using the Azure Blob Storage, which I defined in my link services, which expect a parameter. Yeah, so you can see the parameter here. Yeah, and we have different parameters available. So the connection secret, the file, the directory, and the container, which is nothing else than how you address and access, for example, the product key, right? We have a block container, we have a directory, we have a storage account, and so forth. So all these information are parameters. That means I can use this CSV Azure Blob Storage for every file within my blob storage, as far as this is a delimited text file. I mean, you can even use it for JSON files or whatever, but I do not consider this to be best practice because at least I want to have a separate data set for specific, I would say, data set types. I do not want to mix them up, but it is possible. Anyway, so you can now parameterize the file passes here. So let me delete this one so you can see how it works. So you can say add dynamic content. And you remember that we had one parameter which is called container. And that is how you can pass the value of the container at runtime to the file pass, yeah, by just using, I would say, dynamic parameter or dynamic value, which is really, really handy. So now you can test this one. And the secret, I don't know why my file is gone. So the secret, I need to go to my storage account. So by chance, one file is closed, which makes the presentation now a little bit more difficult for me. So let me go to my storage account. And not to my storage account, to my Key Vault, because now I need to copy this another time. I did it already before the presentation, but again, for some reasons, I don't understand. So this is the ADF demo 2 access key, right? And you remember this is nothing else than the access to the blob storage. So when I now use this and say, okay, I can easily test the connection and it's successful. That's great. Because again, you have one data set for every single delimited text file within your Azure Blob Storage, which is very, very handy. So the next thing you want to do is you want to create your first pipeline, right? You can, for sure, you can create a lot of more data sets, and you can create SQL data sets, you can create Packet data sets, you can create a lot of them, right? Anyway, so let me start with a very simple one. That is, well, let me start with this one. This is a little bit more simple. So we have something which is called an Azure data flow. So normally you have pipelines, and within pipelines you cannot apply any transformation. That means you cannot aggregate data, you cannot join data, you cannot have a lookup, everything like this. So when you need something like this, there's a possibility to do it without Azure Data, Azure Databricks or notebooks or whatever. Yeah. So it is called data flows. So in order to do the transformation, you can set up a data flow, which you can now call from a single pipeline, or not from a single, you can reuse this in several pipelines, but anyway. So sales order detail, let me open this one. So here, this is the pipeline. I mean, it's a data flow, but you can still consider this as a pipeline. Yeah, when you use SSIS in the past, then you are very familiar with the idea of having a data flow. Yeah, it's Adriano. There's a lot of background noise here. I don't know why. Okay, so you can define, I don't know, maybe sales order detail, and you want to join it with products, for example. Yeah, just want to give you an example that Azure Data Factory is more than just copy data from a source to a target. You can also transform data very easily by using the GUI, which is available in a data flow, but there are limitations for sure. Yeah, when you have a lot of knowledge about Databricks and notebooks, yeah, and I don't know, Python or whatever, it is much better to do it in a notebook, yeah, and call the notebook from your pipeline rather than using a data flow. But anyway, when you want to have a UI approach, a data flow maybe works better for you. Yeah, you have a lot of, I would say, um, yeah, activities here. Yeah, so you can see most of them, or most of the transformations you see here, you will find in SSIS, for example. Yeah, so maybe someone of you have a lot of knowledge in SSIS. It's pretty much the same, I would say. So that is how to create a data flow, and from pipeline now you can call the data flow. So you just have to put in a data flow activity, and in the settings you have to define which data flow you want to use, and maybe you have to give some parameters. That's all. That's fine. Next thing I want to cover is maybe there's a possibility to iterate through a specific folder. Yeah, you remember that in my storage account. Oh, this is what I. So you can see I have the same file called sales order header. Yeah, for different years. Yeah, but the structure is still the same. The definition of the text file is always the same. So you can easily iterate through a folder, right? So we can get the metadata first of all to understand how many data you have in how many files you have in your folder, and this is what you can now pass over in a for each loop container, and you can call the sales order header pipeline from here every single time. So that means when I have 6 files in my folder, for example, the iteration happens 6 times. Yeah, very easily. I mean, this is I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with the concept of data flow with pipelines, everything like this. So now I want to go back to the because I'm a little bit running out of time. This is also because I had a disconnection here of 7 minutes at least. So let me go to the integration runtime. So the self-hosted integration runtime is the component which was installed on the on-premise VM in my case. Now I have access to the VM, and not even to this VM, but I have also connection and access to other on-premise data sources as far as the VM is in the same subnet or whatever, yeah, like other data sources I want to access from there. So that means you can, when you think about the architecture, for example, it is a very common use case that you have maybe 1 or 2 or just a few number of self-hosted integration runtimes available in your overall environment, because you do not need to install the self-hosted integration runtime on every single VM. It's all about network, yeah, making sure that one VM can access the other VM. Then I do not need to have 2 on self-hosted integration runtimes. Instead, I can have 1, right? I will also show you in the other presentation how you can use something which is called VNet peering, so that you do not need to have a self-hosted integration runtime, because the self-hosted integration runtime is something you have to maintain. So it requires, I think, once a month an update. And for sure, you need to have a VM where you have to install the self-hosted integration runtime. Maybe this is a VM which you want to access, but you have additional, I would say, CPU, memory, and everything like this, resource consumption on the VM. So whenever there is a way to avoid using a self-hosted integration runtime, you should do it, yeah? Because it's also so much slower than VNet peering. because here you do not need to have a self-hosted integration runtime in between. Yeah. So again, from a performance perspective, self-hosted integration runtime is really, really slow. So anyway, so what you can do now with a self-hosted integration runtime, we can create a linked service, and this is an example. This is an example. Let me go. I don't care. So yes, I have it already here. So I have a VM here, VMDBnet, West Europe, blah blah blah. This is nothing else than the address, the server name of the VM. Here I can define the database name, and for sure I have different kind of authentication types available. But anyway, the most important one is that you have to select the self-hosted integration runtime now in order to access the on-premise data source, because otherwise it will not work. It will not work with the auto-integrated runtime. Yeah, so the other runtime, which is all auto-resolved integration runtime, which is always there, because this integration runtime does not have access to your on-premise data sources. That is the reason why you have to be very carefully. First of all, create your on-premise data sources, on-premise self-hosted integration runtime on your on-premise data source, and then you can create a linked server, and you can use your self-hosted integration runtime to access your on-premise data. That is the way it works. It's interesting, yeah, but again, maybe it's only the only way, but in terms of performance, it is really, really bad, yeah. So that's about the difference between the integration runtimes here. So, and again, so let me, Adriano, I do not know how many time is left. You have an idea?
You're okay with the time.
Okay. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, I can continue. Okay, I can continue now. That's great, because I think I was limited by 1 hour. Okay, the next, in terms of best practice, because we are mainly talking about best practice and some of the examples where we are using best practice, you remember that I had one VM and I also had a SQL database, yeah? And I was already talking about infrastructure as a code. But in order to make sure that every single object within your SQL database, in your SQL VM or whatever, is something which you can recreate from scratch, right? And that is another, I would say, consideration you have to do. Never ever, and I have seen so many projects, and this is really, really, really bad, because again, you will fail. I will guarantee that you are failing. People tend to underestimate the development work for a database. People sometimes, or often it seems, even often than before in former times, that a database is a dumb container. Yeah? You go to the Azure portal and you can create your tables there, you can create your SQL commands there, and you are done. You are not done. So in terms of performance, it's horrible. In terms of reusability, in terms of maintainable and maintenance, in terms of CIDC, this will never ever work. I will guarantee you will fail. I can only repeat this. So again, do yourself a favor and create a proper SSD project. Here you can see it here. I have an SSD project within Visual Studio where you can define all your objects you need. Yeah, schema. For example, you will normally start with a schema or with a user schema, right? Then you can create your table. For example, this is a table. Here you can see how it works. And in the end, when everything works, when you see no issues found because you're not missing any reference or you're not missing any dependent object, you can easily create a release, at least, I call it a release publish file, right? So with different kind of connections, either to development, production, staging, test. I don't know, you can create as many as you want, and I will give you an idea of how it works. So here you define the target database. So this is in my, I have only one database available, but you can already imagine that development definitely is a different server than production, for example. So this is something which you can predefine here in your XML statement, where you can define all your CMD variables. I have at least one variable which is called environment, in order to distinguish between the environments, development, production, staging, and so forth. And maybe database backup, storage redundancy, because I want to create my database from scratch first time, and when I do my changes, SSDT, to be precise, SQL package.exe will detect the schema drift, so it will only apply the changes, which means when you create something in your SSDT project, it will add the resource, the table, for example, the object. When you delete something in your project, right, it is considered to be the single source of truth. It will drop the object, right, and when you do some changes, maybe add a new column to a table, it will automatically apply the changes to your table within the database. That is the way it works, right? Because in the end, it happens that when you double click this one, you can see build started. So that means there's a duckpack file available. So you can see here, this is a duckpack file, which becomes available because this is the first SSCT has to do. Before deploying the code, it has to build the code. This duckpack file can be now used. You can push everything, and you can see already how it works. It is already pushed to an Azure DevOps repository, and that means the duckpack file becomes available when you build your solution. And this duckpack file, together with the different published XML files, which you can define here, right, in order to consider the different environments, the duckpack file in the XML file is everything you need in order to create your proper CID pipeline, a YAML pipeline, right? It depends on the duckpack file. So the duckpack file is created by a build, right? The duckpack file is a result. The duckpack file will be used by SQL package.exe to deploy the changes, and it will automatically connect to the database and compare the objects to in the database to be found in the publish statement, or you can pass over some, I don't know, some secrets. You can connect to a variable group. You can connect to an Azure Key Vault for seamless integration. That is everything you need. It is not that complicated, to be honest, when you do it the first time. It is complicated for sure, but afterwards you have a template which can reuse over and over again, and it will save a lot of time, will save a lot of complexity, and also makes your environment much more stable, right? Think about CIDC, infrastructure as a code, also from a SQL Server perspective, and that is the same for Synapse. It's the same for whatever. So whenever there is a chance to create code, and in an, I would say, in an Azure DevOps or GitHub repository, you should do it, because you should create a CIDC pipeline which will do all the changes for you. Never ever do this manually. You will fail, believe me. So this is about the, I would say, the SQL part, and again, the requirement of CIDC infrastructure as a code and so forth. So let me go back to my Azure Data Factory pipeline. So yeah, I mean, I'm considering the time a bit. I mean, I have another presentation in 2 or 3 weeks' time where I want to present something about the way to migrate your existing SSIS packages to Azure Data Factory. So, and I guess in order to, well, the other way around. I have a lot of other things I want to cover, but maybe I feel that this is maybe better to do it in the next session, because it is more related to this topic rather than, I would say, talking about something which I need to repeat in the next session another time. So that is the reason why I think we have 1 hour recording now. Adriano, is this fine for you when we stop with this presentation and we will go ahead with the second part of it next time?
It's up to you there how you want to do it. Will be just fine. You do not have to worry about the time here. You're doing just fine. If we have to go off, like 15, 20 minutes over, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, okay, but honestly, I'm getting a little bit tired here because it's already past midnight here. So I prefer to extend the session in 2 or 3 weeks' time, a bit, rather than doing it together today another time. So that's better, I think. Okay, so yeah, do you have any questions so far?
Yeah, we do. So, folks, remember, when you have a question, all you have to do is to use the live chat right now during the session. Afterwards, all you gotta do is use the comment section below to enter your question. So, yes, we do have a question. We have a question from Ben. So Ben is asking, so to copy data from on-prem to Azure in an incremental way, self-hosted runtime with Azure Data Factory seems to be the best approach for you.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's almost the only. I mean, you can again. There are two ways in order to access your on-premise data sources. So first of all, the simplest one is the self-hosted integration runtime. Again, this is just a it's a service which you install on your VM. And once this is installed, let me see whether I have a self-hosted integration runtime by chance here on my. I do not have something on my PC. But again, let me go back. I think already. Let me go to the link server here, integration runtime. So again, this is, you remember how I set up the self-hosted integration runtime. This is really easy, right? Just install the executable on your on-premise data source on the VM and link it to your Azure Data Factory, which is done automatically when you download, when you do the Express setup. Otherwise, you have to pass over the keys and you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of configuration. Anyway, the result is the same. You have a self-hosted integration runtime running on your on-premise data source. And again, when you have a VM, which only hosts a self-hosted integration runtime, and this VM have access to all your other on-premise data sources, which is very likely, because think about, I would say, the traditional way to access data between VMs. So normally you have a subnet or a VNet configuration, which give you access to the entire environment from one VM to another VM or to all your VMs. Yeah, it depends how your VNet is set up. Anyway, when you have the on-premise database self-hosted integration runtime somewhere sitting on this VM, you can access everything. SAP, you can access, I don't know, whatever is required. You can install drivers on your VM in order to access SAP, for example, because otherwise maybe you do not have a chance to access the on-premise data source, right? So that is also very, very easy, very handy, that you can install drivers on the VM where your on-premise or self-hosted integration runtime is installed, right? So that you have access to, I don't know, to any, yeah, I would say uncommon platforms or whatever. Yeah. So yes, but again, as already mentioned, performance is something which, when you're really looking for a very good performance, you have to scale up your self-hosted integration runtime, which becomes a little bit more costly, I would say, right? Because you also need the resources on your on-premise VM. Anyway, it's the only way, or you can integrate your on-premise data sources like the VM into the Azure Virtual Network, and then you can have something available which is called VNet peering. So that means you can directly access the on-premise data sources by the same VNet. That's another approach which is much faster. I will show this in the next session. Does it answer your question?
All right, I believe so here. So let's see if somebody else has any other questions here before we bring this session to a conclusion. And as Torsten mentioned, check it out. The next session, stay as a second part to this session here. So let's take a look here. If there's any questions at this point. Nope, it looks good. All right, Torsten.
Okay, cool.
All right, folks. Let's take a look here. So any other slide you may have over there, Torsten, as you bring to a conclusion here?
I mean, I can repeat what I've already trying to explain. I mean, really, the main part is making sure that everything you're doing is something which you can apply by a proper pipeline. That is maybe the most important message here, right? And everything else, I mean, Azure Data Factory is definitely something which is very, very easy to learn, especially when you have SSIS, so Microsoft Integration Services experience. It's very easy to adapt the concept of Azure Data Factory. Yeah.
All right. Yes, there are quite many of the, how to say, principles are there.
Yeah,
I mean,
principles. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. All right, folks. And so, folks, I'd like to thank you all very much for today presentation. Copy data from SQL Server to Azure SQL DB with Azure Data Factory. Now, Torsten, can you place your contact information there in case someone has any
Sure.
questions? You see
Yeah.
your PowerPoint there?
Yeah, this is not the PowerPoint for you remember that that is one. One
Your
second.
first PowerPoint.
Yeah. So I was
All
trying to
right.
open this one.
So, folks, you're going to
Here we
see
go.
in just a minute. There we go. All right. Torsten's contact information right there for you. If you also want to follow up, get in touch with him. And remember, in 2 weeks, which makes the 17th, we are going to see the second part of this presentation. Just stay tuned there in the group. Subscribe to YouTube. You're also going to be able to, and if you subscribe and click the bell, you'll be notified when we add new presentations to it. So you will be able to catch up real quick with those reminders. And that also reminds you when it goes live. So mark your calendar right now. It's going to be, again, Tuesday, May 17th, right here, same time, with Torsten. Now, if there are no more questions and you look good, I would like to say thank you all and Torsten for taking the time to be here with us, learning, sharing another great session here. And Torsten, just hang on a minute there. After the presentation, we can talk real quick. So, folks, thank you. Remember, sign up to the meetup, subscribe, ring the bell so you get a reminder. With that, we say goodbye. Look forward to see you all. Thank you very much.